Show.
And co-host Marine Corps Map, coming to you on Monday and Tuesdays in Studio A, noon to 2 Eastern.
And Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern, with educational, instructional, information, and situational updates, often with wonderful guests on the current landscape in the U.S. and overseas.
This is a go.
We are with you, side to side, and back to back.
Please join us on Monday through Wednesdays,
as with other hosts and guests here on Revolution Radio.
We're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore. We said we're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore.
I'm Reverend Medium Tracy Lockwood, and I'd like to invite you to join me as I discuss life from a medium's perspective. I'll be talking about insights that I've gained through readings, with topics like your guides, angels, animal communication, past lives, our transition, and the afterlife. We'll take a deeper look at the metaphysical meanings of symbols and totems, and I'll give you some practical exercises to help you develop your own natural psychic ability. Join me on From a Medium's Perspective.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event as they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo check? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
Hey everybody, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show, and we are, you can find more about the show if you go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you go to the Schedule A, and you click on that, and then you go down on the Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and there's like a blurb there with contact information if you want to contact me on my website. And also while you're there, you may want to help out with our funding, and so that we can make it through the rest of the month. And you can do that by buying heirloom seeds. You can do that by if you just want to donate something. And also we do have some new banner advertising. So you can support our network in any way you can, because we are 100% listener supported. Anyway, right now my Skype is being a turd muffin, so I'm waiting to see if I could not add in the group my person today for the show, Peter, and so I'm waiting for him to call in, so hopefully I can add him. Anyway, so I tried to add him earlier, and then it didn't save, it got rid of him, and then I tried to add it again and put him on the group, and it refused to do that. So we're having kind of, Skype complications this morning, which is fine. So anyway, so today, our guest, hopefully if we can get him on. Oh, here we go. Oh, let's see. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I had some technical difficulties, and I'm having a really hard time trying to get my guest on. So I'm going to try a different approach here. So just hold on with me 1 second. And let me see if I can. Yeah, I just don't know why. Cannot figure out why Skype will not, even though I've saved him and his phone number, I cannot figure out why Skype will not add him to the group call at all. So let's see. All right, hold on with me. I'm sorry, everybody. Sometimes it's just a pain in the you-know-what. Okay, let me try this method. All right, we got a new method we're using. And let me try this. So I'm going to have to, I found a thing where I can actually dial him in. All right, let's see. All right, let's see if we can dial him right on in. And all right, and then, but I don't see, I want to add that. Let's see. No. Okay, I'm not sure why. This is the craziest thing ever today. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to try to go here. Crud, I might not be able to get my guest on at all today. That is going to be just unbelievably crazy. Okay, let's see. All right, so I'm just going to go through here, and so hopefully we'll be able to get my guest on. And let's try and see if I can find something else. It's just not, it's weird. It's just a really, every time I use Skype, it's like something different is going on. And I can't seem to figure out, how to get, sometimes it's just, I don't get it. I have no idea. I have no idea on how to get my guest on, because Skype is just not offering me. And it also will not add, if he calls in, it's not adding him on. So, let me see here. All right, so hang with me here. Let's see if I can, it's right there, and he's saved, but I don't know why it will not let me add him to the call. I have zero idea why it won't let me do this. It won't let me call him. It won't let me add him. It won't let me, if he calls in, it won't let me add him. And it won't let me, I just really don't know. I'm not sure what to do. I'm very, very, very confused. All right, let me see here. Yeah, I just have no idea what to do now at this point. All right, so now that Skype has totally done my show in today, I'm not sure what to do. So there we are. So we were going to be talking about, we're going to talk to Peter Van Dyke about mitigating flood stuff in Texas, and now I can't figure out how to get him on the show at all. I think sometimes Skype is like working against us, especially the new types of Skype, because I have no idea. All right, let me see if I can. I just don't know why. I have no idea why it won't add him. It should. Let me see if I can. No, it won't take it any way, shape, or form. Wow, this is troubling. Okay, let me see. All right, so I'm just going to kind of blab on and on while I still try to deal with the situation, because I have to obviously try to deal with my guests too, which I don't really know how I'm going to deal with that while I'm on the show. or at least to kind of convey to him that I'm having trouble with trying to get him on the show, which is like just unbelievable to me. Trying to see if there are some other options here, and on, you know, how to get him on. I don't understand why, you know, he's saved. So anyway, oh, let's see. Here's something. Nope, that's not it either. Okay, well, I just have no idea how I'm going to get my guest on, so I guess that means I'm just going to have to ramble on my own today and try to figure out, you know, how I'm going to do a show. I'm not prepared at all, and I can't get my guest on, and now I can't really even communicate with my guest. So anyway, it's just, Skype is extremely frustrating, and kind of a big pain in the rump roast. Okay, let me try something else. Let me see if I can segue. I just don't think I can make it happen. Okay, so I am going to talk about, I have no idea. How about I will talk about, let me see if I can, hold on one second. I just don't, it's so weird. It's so unbelievably weird that I can't add this person in the group call at all. Even though I've saved him, I don't know how to phone him. I've tried every aspect. I feel super bad right now because this person's been waiting, you know, like 2 months to get on the show. So I have no idea what is going on exactly. So hold on a second. Let me just see if there's something else that I could possibly do to, let's see. I just want to see if I can, yeah, it's already been added. Let's see if I can edit contact information and then see if it'll, you know, add it, and see if it'll add it. Let's just keep working on this to see if it'll keep working on trying to add him. Okay, let's try this again. That's all I can do is just keep modifying the whole thing. And it doesn't want to, this is the other thing too that's really interesting. It doesn't want to add anyone whose contacts saved with a phone number. I mean, onto the Skype call right now, onto the group Skype call. It just doesn't want to do that at all. Which is interesting because I do it all the time. All right, can anyone say hack? Can anyone say something's been hacked? All right, so I don't really know what to do. So what I'm going to do is I may actually contact a friend of mine. Hold on a second. And see if they want to shoot the breeze for a couple hours, because I do have them on Skype. As you know, just a Skype contact. So we'll just see how that goes, and then I can always, and then I'll have to call Peter later and try to reschedule him. I just don't really even know what to say to him. Okay, so hold on one second. Let me see if I can go out. Wow, without dumping myself off the show. And kind of explain what's happened. So he's not sitting for, 2 hours trying to figure out what's going on. So hold on one second. And let me see. It looks like I'm still connected, which is great. Hold on. Hold on. Let me see if I get... let's see, with your phone number. Hold on, let me see if I can do this. Just letting him know that I can't get him on with his phone number and on Facebook. And if you have Skype user, please send me contact. Okay, let's see how that works out. It doesn't look like he's checking his Facebook, but obviously, hopefully, something will come about. And let's see. Let's see, hold on a second. Yeah. Okay, I'm back on here. And let me see if it is. It is a phone number that I'm trying to use. And it's yeah, and it's a phone number that I'm trying to use. Ooh, what's that? Oop. All right. Anyway, so trying to get my guest on, and I'm trying to figure out what the things that are going on right now, and getting back onto the front of the show. Let's see. Oh, I can go back to the little check. So anyway, that's where we're at right now. And I tried to contact a friend of mine who's on Skype user. So you know what? I'm just gonna have to kind of talk about what's going on. I don't think that my guest is going to be looking on Facebook. So if he does, maybe halfway through the show, he can send me a user contact if he has a Skype account. Not sure if he does. And then maybe he can get on the show. But right now, can't. I saved him and his phone number in my settings so that I could just pull him up onto the group chat, and it won't do it. And I can't call out to his phone off Studio A either. It's not doing that. It won't do it any way, shape, or form. So, I just don't have a whole lot of other options. So anyway, Skype just keeps changing things, and it's, getting more and more difficult to actually use Skype and trying to get people on and guests on and things like that. And the other thing too is like he's not showing up, even though I saved him under his name, it's not showing up any way, shape, or form in my contact list, which is like even stranger. I mean, even people with phone numbers, are in my contact list. But anyway, lately I've just had all kinds of weird computer situations and things going on anyway. I mean, I have, and I'll just talk about this because I don't really have anything else to talk about, but lately I have the weirdest stuff that's going on. Like, for example, it all started like maybe, I don't know, what's today? Today's Saturday. So I left Reno. I'm on the road. So, I have to pull over, and do my show, set up my computer and everything else, make sure I have good Wi-Fi. And so on, I'm going to say Wednesday, this weird thing kept popping up from Google, and it kept saying, it was like a blank page, and it would say listening on it. And so I would get rid of it, look to try to figure out how to turn it off, because I think it's like, it wants me to say something. This is what I think it is, it comes up so that I can speak to it, and it'll find what I want, and then, help me find it. But I turn those things off. So it just keeps popping up, and then it just shows listening on it, and it's this blank page, and in the background you can see it's like, faded out gray color Google. And so I'm like, I don't want you to be listening, and I don't want to tell you about just don't really want to tell you about. See, and that's weird too. So the studio contacted me, said, "What's your contact name? Is it a phone number?" And I even typed in a response back to my studio, and I pushed the button, and it was up there for a second, and now it's gone. So, I mean, it's just whatever is going on. It's just beyond bizarre. So anyway, so this is what happened. So I'm thinking, I'm getting paranoid because I'm thinking somebody is sending is just turning, my tablet and my computer on and sending me this listening thing because I'm not activating it. I don't want it. And, I'm just turning it off. And then I just got to where, I turned the volume all the way down. So there's, as far as I know, you can't hear on the microphone and you can't hear on the tablet or whatever else. So I'm just turning it all the way off. So I can't hear anything, and hopefully nobody else can hear anything because I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on. So then on Thursday morning, I get up and I turn my, technology on, my computer technology's on because I have to do some work. And this weird thing pops up and it has a play button. It has a weird picture thumbnail and, it's some kind of message, right? But it's a really bizarre message. It makes like absolutely no sense. I have no idea where it came from. It hasn't come from anything that I have or that I'm, signed into or that I use. And so like I get rid of it. And then, the last couple of days, it's just been like this stuff just keeps like popping up. And it's getting kind of creepy because I'm not sure either who's trying to communicate with me, right? With these little messages that they're sending in these recorded things. And I'm not sure who is listening, right? For me to like talk to. And so it's just kind of gotten really, really creepy in the last couple of days because I've called computer friends of mine, who are good at all this stuff and asked them about it. And they have no idea. They're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And it's like, well, this is what's going on. And they're like, just don't know. Just have no idea. But in the past, I've had a lot of weird stuff like this happen in my life, personally, but I've never had it come through like technology, so being a star kid, there are things that happen. So I have no idea if it's my star family that's trying to talk to me. I have no idea. I know that there are people who have had a lot of extraterrestrial contact that, the star people will talk to them, leave messages on their voicemails and, even leave, things at their house or, whatever else. Some of them, they even knock right on the door and talk to them. But in the past, my star family hasn't really done that kind of stuff. So, I'm not really sure who it is and, or what it is or, what's going on, or who's trying to communicate with me. And the whole thing kind of bothers me because, we have some serious problems these days because we have a lot of people are being attacked with, electronic pulses, which, a friend of mine who is pretty fairly young, she had she's like a really awake person who I talk to a lot. And she's kind of a whistleblower kind of person. And, I don't know, about a year ago, she was electronically, sent a pulse weapon, through her phone. And now she's, she was like only like maybe 30. At the time that it happened, and now her half of her face is like a permanent stroke state. And I know that this kind of stuff's happened to Carrie Cassidy while she's been doing interviews, that they send out pulse weapons. So, I don't really answer the phone, I don't really, if I don't know you, I'm not going to, answer the number or whatever else or any of that stuff. And then so to have this weird, thing coming on, I sure as heck don't want to answer it and talk to whoever or whatever. And, with them leaving weird messages that don't really make any sense to me. And it, on some level, even though I've had a lot of really strange things happen to me in the course of my life, there's some things that are strange because, I'm not really familiar with them. So the way my star family in the past was communicated to me, because they don't really come here to this planet, is they send things like plugins, or stuff that has its own technology that's like attached to it. And if you looked at it, you would never say, oh, wow, that's, got a machine in there or a voice recorder or anything like that. But I always tell people the brick story because it's the easiest one for people to wrap their heads around. But what'll happen is I'll have a dream, and I'll dream about something. For example, I had a dream about this brick. It was like a pink, rectangle brick. And it had 2 small flags painted on the front of it in red, white, and blue. And they were both kind of different. They weren't like your typical usual flags. And you could tell that somebody took a stencil and spray painted on them, right? So, I don't know, like maybe 4 to 6 months later, I was walking through the middle of the desert, right? And here's this perfectly pink brick with this, fresh like paint on it, like brand new, like somebody had just put it there this morning. So I know that I'm supposed to take it. And so another thing too is I do not pick up rocks or stones. I do not take anything. I don't pick up money. I don't, because there are also negative beings who are utilizing things like that people will pick up and they'll put in their pocket or they'll take home with them. And really dark things are piggybacking on those things. So I've learned from my native teachers not to pick things up or take them with me. And so even if there's $10 on the ground, I won't pick it up. I won't touch it. And I'll leave it for somebody else who wants to have that experience if there's anything attached to it. So I only will pick up things and take them if they're my family, my star family has sent me a dream or a notification. We'll call it a notification. And then I find it and then I bring it. And then usually within a couple of days, the information in it gets downloaded into me. And then once it's downloaded, then the object no longer has that information stored in it anymore. And the object is safe. So I usually will put it back out somewhere else. I don't keep them. So once they're downloaded, then, there's nothing else in them for people. So, and there's all kinds of different things that are downloaded into these things. So in the last few years, only a couple times, these objects will send me, literally split, my energy self out of my body self. And it will send me to, I don't know, we'll call it like Star Trek or whatever, the holodeck. And it sends me to a place where they have prepared a holographic conversation, and it pulls me up there and, like I'll be in a seat, and then there'll be, I can feel 200 or 300 different extraterrestrial beings in the room, but I can't see any of them. And only the one that's talking to me directly in the holographic experience, kind of glow. She usually glows from the inside out. So the light emanates from her, and then she'll, telepathically, usually there's like 5 or 6 trails of information coming from all directions that will make sense once all of it's in. And then that's usually it. And then I come back. So, and I just want people to know, they don't give me information about what's going to happen to this world. They don't give me any of that kind of information. It's different information. And sometimes it's mostly just information for me, especially if I'm having a really difficult time, or I'm really emotional, or I really feel like, there's stuff that I really can't break free of. They will eventually, do something like this to help me put it into perspective, like into a really big perspective that includes the past, and sometimes thousands and thousands and thousands of years in the past, the present, and the future, like far ahead in the future. So that it can help to give me a perspective. And not always does it help me. there have been times where I've left those situations so angry that I refuse to pick up anything, any of their, technology that they're leaving around. I went almost a year, maybe 2 years of total refusal to even talk to them or participate because I didn't really like the information. So, sometimes some of it is it's difficult. And then, meanwhile, here I have all this other stuff going on, and then I have to live some kind of a meaningful life, in a world that less and less makes sense to me, doesn't make any sense to me. So it can be really tough to kind of bridge it all and put it together. So these weird calls that are showing up on my computer and my tablet and weird messages, and they'll have like unknown messenger on there, and just really, really weird stuff. And until I figure out, and this other thing too is, how do I know that these messages don't have there's some kind of like mind control from the government or handlers, or something that's trying to activate me in some kind of strange way. So I'd rather just not participate in any of it. I just until I know for sure what it is. So in 2000, I think it was like 3 summers ago. So this is 2015. Right before I was getting ready to leave on a trip to go work on land. I pretty much kind of live in my van in the summer times. In the wintertime, I get places to stay. And it's because I travel a lot in the summer, and I go work on different projects and, food production and medicine. And sometimes I go and learn, new things and do things. And, so it helps me to kind of fly by the seat of my pants. So it was like the summer of 2015. And I don't even know why I'm going down this whole road, but anyway, obviously, maybe it's necessary. So I was in this huge parking lot. A friend of mine lived in an apartment complex way out on the edge of Reno, and it had like this giant parking lot there. And the people were super cool there because my friend, he's like my dad. And he lived in this studio apartment with his wife, and his wife passed over. And he asked me, to come back to Reno from where I was, if I could help him. And he was just having a really hard time. And they were together a long time. And he just had, documents and bills and trying to dig through everything because it happened kind of all of a sudden. And, help pack her stuff up and, help go sell what was valuable so that he could pay bills, because he also lost, half of his income, which was really tough. So the people were really nice at the apartment complex, and I said, look, his house is really small and in his little studio, and he's got 2 cats in there, and I have a big dog and me, and so while I help him clean it all up, would you guys be totally opposed, if I just lived in my van, because, I have a bed and, everything. I'm pretty sustainable. I can go in and help cook meals for him and stuff like that. And they were like, no, you can totally stay here. And, however you need to do it and help him, because he's a really great man, and, he's been confused and he's having a really hard time. So I said, all right, great. That's going to work out just fine. So I was there for like 2 months, and just making sure I was cooking meals and getting groceries for him and helping him to box up stuff and get rid of this and get rid of that and get bills paid and get the car fixed and, whatever else needed to have, because he was kind of, overwhelmed. And a week before I was getting ready to go to this other job on the land, and I was going to be traveling out of state, I was laying on my bed and in the van, and I can see out the front windows, out the front windshield, and where I'm parked is a whole field. Like my front windshield is pointed out like these trees, area, kind of a woodland area, and it's kind of thick. And I remember I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning because I felt creepy. I felt something had been staring at me. And so I look out the front window and I see it took me a while to kind of figure out what I was looking at, but ultimately I was looking at a 6-foot humanoid bird. So some kind of humanoid that was like a bird, and he had like a coat and he had this hat, and the coat and hat matched. And I remember I was so focused in on the coat and hat because I was like, wow, that's nice wool. It was like totally some other planet. And I don't know, maybe it was about 40 minutes. And I was just kind of lost in mellow thoughts about looking at this bird and looking at the color of the face and the eyes. And I mean, every time I would look at a different part, the fact that he had no ear and that it was like there was a hole there and all this other stuff, every time I'd be like, wow, that's like a bird. That's like a bird humanoid. And then my thoughts would be redirected to something like the hat. Oh yeah, that's really nice wool, kind of a thing. So I was being kind of calmed down at every turn so that I didn't get like totally freaked out. Mind you, it's still dark outside. It's 5 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. So there's a point where all of a sudden the being starts to vanish, right? And so just parts of it vanishes until it's just the face and the eyes are looking at me, and then it slowly vanishes. And then as soon as it completely vanished, I don't think that it meant me harm. I think that it was actually, an extraterrestrial of some type that was trying to communicate with me. But because I had never seen an extraterrestrial like that, I totally there was part of my brain that was not doing well. And so that being kept rerouting my brain to calmer thoughts. So after it was gone, I got up and I got in my van and I started the car, and I thought, I'm just going to drive, over to Starbucks and just get a coffee and just calm down because, I can't really go back to sleep. So halfway to Starbucks, it hits me, like the whole experience hits me, and I literally have to pull over on the side of the road, open the door, and I just start projectile vomiting. And my body starts to shake because sometimes you have experiences with things and you might be okay emotionally with it. You can wrap your head around it, but there's part of your body that has this instinctual flight or fight, freeze mode, that you're also going to have to deal with that when it all kind of hits and comes forward. And just like if people get severely injured or they go through like a really major epic, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's the same thing that happens. And so, for like a half an hour, I'm like vomiting in these bushes and my body's shaking so bad, like I can't even get in the car and drive. And so sometimes, even I question, like how sane am I this morning? And so when I have a situation like that my body is reacting to so severely, I know for a fact that it happened. If I don't get a reaction like that sometimes, then I know that it didn't happen, right? So anyway, in 2005, and these are not, I'm sorry to a lot of the ET people out there, but I've never seen a blue avian, and I've never, those are not ETs that I've ever seen or I've never had experiences with. But I have had lots of experiences with different kinds of extraterrestrials. I mean, all different kinds across the board. And then, there's this crazy squirrel that is, Mama Squirrel. She's out. Yesterday I had a cat on Mona's show, like coming up and down the van, trying to get in the van, because that's where I'm doing my show, trying to get in the window. So now today I have a crazy squirrel. So it's just gonna. All right. So anyway, today we're dealing with squirrel medicine. I better start, saving my nuts. Something's coming, right? It's telling me that something's coming. Oh, it's coming right up to the window. Interesting. This is a really weird place. Okay. So when we go back to I think we're dealing with a lot of the extraterrestrial stuff. I just want to put that out there. Do I think that there are some higher evolved beings? Yes, I do. I've met them. Do they really care about what's going on here? No, they don't. And most of them are coming here for like scientific research and picking up plants and different things and biological materials and taking them back to their planet. And it's not that they don't care, but I think that they feel that we've been given everything that can be possibly given to, and that we should ultimately make the decisions about what is going on here. And we have to learn how to get over, some of this programming where we, give our authority away. And, we rely on other people or other beings, to save us from whatever's going to happen. And ultimately, a lot of this stuff kind of ends up doing us in. And, there's always the regular extraterrestrials on the planet that, have been breeding humanoids for a long time, and then periodically, wipe them out. And then Robert Spur having the Mud Fossil University guy from a few weeks ago, and him talking about how, a lot of the research and actual DNA and stuff that he's doing on these rock specimens, and that there's blood and these rocks, and they come from, there were huge giants of all different sizes living on the planet until the flood came. And that he, has been reading a lot of these ancient texts, like Epithius and, all these old things and different kinds of texts. And, that, these beings are so large and big, some of them, that, they could literally throw a comet at the planet and just destroy like the whole population of the world effortlessly. And I think that we have to be really careful not to get captured in. Lately, I've had to deal with a lot of people who are, heavy into the religion, and that, our extinction, our biblical extinction. Mind you, the Hopis have all the oral history from all the extinctions. Their people have survived all the extinctions, including the flood. And the extraterrestrial, they call them the ant people, came to their aid and took them, down below the surface into the caves and taught them how to grow food and store food. And that there was a time frame and how to keep the time so that they knew when they could actually come back onto the surface of Earth. So there were lots of races that were saved, during different kinds of extinctions. So now we're in this whole phase where a lot of people are really freaking out biblically, because, the Earth will be destroyed by fire. And I think it's really interesting having, talked to some of these people and explain to them, what the Hopis say, that they have, like 400,000, oral history of surviving, each eradication of the population that was on the planet so that it could be biologically restarted. And they really can't grasp that. And they're right. I really believe that the last, placement of people on the earth, or a lot of the races that exist now were put in at the Sumerian tablets, say 7,000 years ago, that the Anunnaki started creating, some humanoids. So there's also other, extraterrestrial that create, humanoids by their design as well. So we're probably not that far along in it. So there's all these massive fires all over the West Coast. I mean, I literally have not gone anywhere where there isn't any fire and really heavy smoke. And even including in Reno where I was at, and for 2 months, the smoke was really, really intensely bad. And then, being on this trip, the smoke is pretty bad in some of the areas that I've been traveling. And so it's really kind of alerting, people who are really on the biblical end of things, and they are really kind of preparing for the end. Except for, I don't think that they're preparing for the part that confuses me a little bit is that you would think that if they're kind of preparing for the end, to be taken by, the being that they believe in, say Jesus, and, maybe it won't be the end. Maybe the fires or an indication of a change or a shift. I mean, we don't really know, a lot of the lava and stuff like that. Maybe it won't be the whole thing. And this is the other thing, the earth being destroyed. Now, unless it had exploded, right, and became nanoparticles all over the galaxy, that's not really the destruction of earth, is it? Right? So, I don't think that sometimes people think some of the things that they believe through. But I'm astonished that they're not like, if they feel this way, why don't they have food storage? If they feel this way, why don't they have water storage? If they feel this way, why aren't they the least remote prepared? And I think in the New Age community too, and the Ascension community, some of the same things happen. They somehow think that they'll be good enough that whatever is going to save them is going to, take them away immediately and take them somewhere else. My experience with the extraterrestrials, if they're going to take you off and take you somewhere else, it's probably because of your food. And because some of the extraterrestrials, rely on us like we're cattle. And they do take us away and they do eat us. I mean, look at what we call the satanic movement, and that they're doing all these things and eating kids and drinking their blood and sacrificing them. Where do you think that they learn that? The beings that they're worshiping or that they're following have taught them, to do those kinds of practices. So, if people are out there and they're concerned about what's going on, maybe you should spend a little bit more money, and get a food storage, because I think really ultimately what I am seeing happening is that the currency is going to collapse in the United States. And then whatever time period that, I'm looking at Venezuela. So this last week, Venezuela's currency, they revalued it, right? Because they've been selling their oil to like the US for zero, for nothing. It's like no value. So their currency is like 0.000058. So it's not even close to a cent or a fifth of a cent or anything. It's like virtually worthless. And last week they revalued it finally to 0.58. So they dropped the 5 zeros. So now it's worth 58 cents on every US dollar. So the US is like, Russia is full steam ahead and all these other countries and dumping the USD bonds. And so I think what's going to happen that people really should be prepared for, that if nobody saved Russia from economic collapse, do you think that, as an American, you're so special that you're going to be saved from economic collapse? At some point when these financial systems, are put together and arranged, there's only so long that they can hold them up, especially when they're not based on natural, let's just say natural law or flow of commerce and money. Some of the oldest money in the world were coins, silver coins that, people had sheep, flocks of sheep, and they created a coin. So one coin was equal to one sheep. So if you wanted to pack up and move somewhere, you could sell all your sheep. You have the coins in your pocket, and you could go somewhere else and set up camp and buy all of the same amount of sheep that you had before. And so there was no inflation, no deflation. There was nothing, right? It was coin for livestock, right? So all of the original natural money goes back to agriculture. You know, you look at the native people, and they had certain strains of corns and beans and other, you know, varieties that may have done well in better locations. And people would marry into certain families to make sure that the tribes, both sides of the tribes, would have tons of food, which was seed. So we have had currency that isn't even really currency. It's not really attached to anything. And I'm not really even sure that attaching a currency to a standard like gold or silver really matters either, because you can't really eat gold and silver. You can't drink it. You can't eat it. You can't do anything with it. And you can't fix soil, and you can't really restore soil, you know, on your land. So you, even if a lot of these countries are doing the GCR, if a lot of these countries don't, you know, which is the global reset or whatever it's going to be, you know, if a lot of these countries don't move to other formats, like, for example, Russia, you know, Russia learned their lesson in the last currency collapse. So they grow like all their food. And right now they're growing, like, they're the number one biodynamic country. I know a lot about their agricultural system because I studied biodynamics and got my certification in them. And Russia, because of Chernobyl, you know, liked a lot of the medicinal remedies that we had, like the barrel preparation, that is eliminating all of the radioactive material in the areas around Chernobyl. So they're just slowly using the microbial medicine, and the stuff eats it up. So they really love the biodynamic, you know, philosophies and the preparations and everything. So they have everyone growing food. I mean, right now they have, like, you know, an ancient strain of organic wheat, and India is buying it up like crazy. All these countries are buying up these beautiful, like, natural grown, you know, products like crazy. And they don't want to deal with the U.S., you know, products that are coming out of the U.S. that are disgusting and toxic. And I was just reading an article this morning that now Vietnam is actually filing a whole country lawsuit against Monsanto's, because this guy won in California against Monsanto's for $289 million that Monsanto's products has given him, you know, not one form of cancer, but several. So now the whole country of Vietnam is filing a lawsuit against Monsanto's, because it turns out that during the Vietnam War, Monsanto's was the company that developed Agent Orange, that sold Agent Orange, and that it was sprayed all over all of our troops, all the troops from all over the world. I mean, Vietnam was just a scientific experiment for them to do their, you know, chemical warfare on the bad guys. So the Vietnam is now filing a lawsuit against Monsanto's in behalf of their whole country and all of their citizens, because, you know, there was all kinds of genetic mutations that were passed on from the people who were originally sprayed. So Russia in 2014, I think it was, banned everything genetically modified. Period, end of story. They burned all the crops. Now, if you get caught with anything that's genetically modified, it's automatic, like, $5,000 fine. Say it's just a box of crackers that comes in the country. They're going to fine the people that have it, and they're going to fine the company $5,000 and or jail time if you find GMOs in any of your products. So, you know, America is a massive GMO country with GMO crops, and the rest of the world is, you know, kind of standing up and saying, no, we're not gonna play in that anymore. So in the GCR, you can start to see some of these countries that are moving towards clean food as part of their assets that are going to back their currency in the future. You know, like, you know, 50 to 60%. Okay, we'll be back. Go under commercial.
freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes, your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And I was not prepared to do a show on my own. Thank God I'm really good at yakking my face off. I have lots of things to talk about, I think, that most people don't even know about. But my guest today was supposed to be Peter Van Dyke, who drought resistant Texas. Anyway, let me give you a few of his websites just in case. And I'm going to definitely, when I get done here, I'm definitely going to contact him and make sure, that I can get him on. We were going to talk about flood and drought mitigation and new things in soil. Drought Proof Texas is his website, and it is also his Facebook page. And he is also kind of in the large scale land restoration to help fill aquifers and things like that, so we don't have to not have water and also not have all these people controlling the water. There are things that we can actually do. So I just want to let people know that, and I have no idea when I'll be able to get him back on, but I will definitely talk to him later today, and if he's listening or whatever. I did try to send a Facebook message, but I don't think that it got seen. So anyway, so sometimes this stuff happens, and Skype keeps updating itself, and Microsoft keeps updating it and continually changing it, and on every apparatus or whatever piece of technology, whether it's the iPhone or the tablet or iPad or computer, it's just totally changing across the board, and it just doesn't work the way that it's supposed to work. And today the computer wouldn't take a contact to add on to the group call, and it would not use a phone number any way, shape, or form. So when he called in, I couldn't add him, and when I called him, couldn't add him. So actually, it wouldn't let me call out to him. So anyway, just a big turd. Skype is a big turd that's wrapped in a bow, but it doesn't mean that it may look pretty, but it doesn't work very well. It's still a turd. Okay, so I was just trying to think about, what might be a good conversation, for the second hour. And I was just trying to think about maybe some things. I haven't been able to do videos on my YouTube channel since I've been on the road. I'm just a lot of personal work and a lot of personal things that have been going on, like, on a spiritual level. So I've just been trying to maneuver through that. And I've been trying to get a lot more rest because I really, really needed rest. I think I've been pretty exhausted for about 2 years of all the work and everything that I do. So I'm just trying to really, be low key as I travel around. So one of the things that I've been really noticing here on the West Coast, as I'm traveling up the West Coast, is what's going on with people. Sometimes you get out of the area where you're used to being in for whatever, 6 months or a year. I really see it, when I start to get on the road. And there are people that are kind of waking up, but they just really are not really with it. Like people will say to me, oh yeah, my neighbor, she's into those chem things. And it's like, well, have you looked into those chem things? Well, yeah, she's pointed them out, but, I just don't really, have time for that. Or, here we go again with religion. They think that somehow something is going to, save them because they're, faithful, and they don't really have to get active in doing anything. People really need to get active, whether you're talking to other people more. One of the reasons that I'm really active is, for the last 4 or 5 years off and on, I've been doing online TV and online radio. So those are the ways that I try to stay active. Plus I work in my communities. Last year alone, I did, I did maybe like 4 workshops, and then I did 2 free, one was for 4 months. I did a pain management kind of class twice a month at a community center. And then I also did what I call basics in nutrition lectures that are 3 hours a piece, 1 and 2. And even though I don't have people in the community that show up, obviously nobody showed up to these. I had a nurse that showed up to the first lecture on basic nutrition, and it goes over all the stuff that really is in the real nutrition category, not just the crap that you can find on the internet that all these people write about, that like say a doctor is writing on nutrition, and maybe they're out of the box, and maybe they have their own chemistry supplements that are better than the average chemistry, but the problem is that they've never studied soil, they've never worked on land, and they're missing like a giant component of nutrient, the conversation about nutrient. And so you can't just take, supplements. All right, danger, dog. My dog's growling at someone. No. Anyway, you can't just take a supplement and expect it to do all the processes that are necessary. I think most every nutrient that you take that has to go in your body, it is linked up to other nutrition, other nutritional processes. And so if you're not getting roundabout nutrition, which is you eating the food, it going into your gut, and then your body breaks it down using the chemistry that it has, and then using it all for the processes. I think if you, take supplements, you're probably going to get something out of it. I always get a lot of these people who are constantly calling me because they know that I'm in healthcare. I'm a healthcare practitioner online. I'm starting to see more and more people for nutritional consulting. And I've branched out so that I can travel a little bit more and work on land projects, and still be able to make a little bit of money as, so I do nutrition, and I call pharmacy, FARMAACY instead of the PH, because I'm dealing with food, FOOD, not PHUD. And a lot of this stuff, a lot of the supplements out there are under the PHUD. If you are going to sell any product, and I don't really care what kind of product it is, I looked into years ago making my own tea blends, from, buying the organic herbs and then, putting the chemistry together on the specific herbs that would be in the tea. And then, I even went so far as to getting labels made for them and everything else, which was quite a bit at that time. Was like $6,000 for custom design and labeling. But then, I hit a wall with the, Food and Drug Administration, and you have to actually have a, FDA, USDA, lab. And so you have to send your product that you want put in a certain way into a certain thing it has to go through this lab, and then it has to be packaged in that lab, and then it comes back to you, and then you can, send it out. So if you're dealing with the mainstream, there is not one thing that you're going to buy that with the packaging on it that hasn't been forced for you to be made through an FDA lab. So, which means, that the stuff has to be tested and all that other stuff. So you're dealing with a lot of supplements. Someone did a study on the Kirkland brand vitamins that go through Costco. And they said that they have zero nutritional value. There isn't like one nutritional value in the supplements, even though like on the ingredient, they say, well, I've got, this much magnesium and this much calcium. They said that it was zero. So a lot of nutritional supplements on the market as well don't really have in them what's in them. And, and your body's trying to break it down with the acids and everything in your stomach. It needs to break down whatever it is as a whole nutrition, so the food that you should be eating should have a roundabout of nutrition. So the difference between making your soil nice, making it have lots of, microbes in the soil, and then, the natural nutrient, because you're building your soil, you're planting other kinds of plants that actually give to that soil. Some people, when they let their fields go fallow, they'll, for a couple of years, because, they've been grown on too much, they'll put what's called a cover crop on it, and the cover crop grows, and then, it refeeds the soil, rebuilds the soil. And these are practices that it take a lot of time, and take many seasons. I mean, sometimes you can buy a piece of property and the dirt is terrible, and you might have to keep fixing it and fixing it and fixing it, until it'll actually really grow things really well. And you have enough microbes in it and micronutrients and all this other stuff. So I tell people, when I teach my basics of nutrition courses, and hopefully when I get back to Reno, I'm going to actually finish up. I've got 11 courses on Udemy that aren't out on Udemy yet. And one of them is going to be a 5-part basics of nutrition course, which people can take. But I'm just so far behind on getting all the stuff done that I need to. My pile has been large, but I have gotten, half of the Udemy courses done. I just have to start adding the lectures and stuff to it. Anyway, so one of the things I tell people is the nutrient that nobody ever talks about, that never is disclosed, is water, right? There's this really great water video from a scientist, I think his last name is Polak. He wrote a book that's an amazing book. I have the book. It's called The Fourth Phase of Water, but you can find him on YouTube in TED.com. I think it's called The Fourth Phase of Water. And he talks about how, scientific research has shown that we should really be drinking water that is charged by sunlight. So this nutrient that we're missing is actually electrical, like an electrical component. And if you think about that, if a person's like a living being and your cells have charges in them and your proteins have charges in them, like Bruce Lipton talks about, go look at Bruce Lipton and all of his work, The Biology of Belief. And he says the positive and negative charges, right? They open the cell or close the cell. And, if the cell's open, then things can land on the cell, fill the cell like oxygen and water and stuff. If the cell's closed or the cell's damaged, or you have inflammatory system, which means that your cells are not even circular anymore. They're sticking together and they're causing clogging in the arteries. So there's no food or oxygen or anything that's being moved anywhere in your body. It's the first step of all disease. So, and doctors don't seem to understand that either. But so the water, how we would have drank it, it goes through, and I really started to understand this because I really got into a lot of Victor Schallenberger's work when I was studying at Rudolf Steiner College, and I was working on biodynamic farms, and I was taking my biodynamic certifications and doing all that work. We are really big into flow forms, a lot of these amazing flow forms that are built in places like Australia and other countries where, water, returning what they call the spirit to water back to the water. And these flow forms move in an undulating process like a yin and yang, like rivers do. So you run your water through these long flow forms, and then you irrigate your crops with it. And a lot of people, and I've been on farms where they do a lot of this work, they get down to a quarter of the water usage by just running the water through the flow forms, because it actually restructures the water or returns the spirit to it or whatever, oxygenates it. There's lots of theories and ideas around what the flow form does. But the key is that the plants grow better with the structured water that are, moved through the flow forms. And I think a lot of it has to do with that when they're going through the flow forms, they're having contact with the sunlight and it's being oxygenated and the structure is being returned back to the water. So in biodynamic farming, any water that comes through pipes, we call it tap liquid. We don't even really consider it to actually be water. And Victor Schallenberger's work was really big on this, that, when water is forced through a pipe, that it actually loses its structure. So it loses what water is good, the good parts of the water. And so he claimed that if you took pipes and you would create them like gun barrels, and just, cut rivets on the inside, or not rivets, but cut, swirls and different kinds of patterns just on the inside of the pipes. When you shot the water through, it wouldn't kill it. It would actually activate it and help its process. And it's more complicated than that. But there are tons of videos on YouTube about Victor Schallenberger's water work. And there's a guy named Kong Coates who has revisited a lot of Victor Schallenberger's books and written some really amazing books. And he has some amazing videos on there as well. But anyway, back to Pollock. So Pollock wrote a book called The Fourth Phase of Water. You can go see him on TED.com. I think it's called The Fourth Phase of Water, the lecture. But he talks about how, that the water would have undulated, like basically down rivers. It would have cleaned itself and oxygenated itself. And as the river bashed against the rocks and stuff like that, it picks up nutrient, right? It's breaking down micronutrient in the granite and this, that, and the other thing. And this is why they find that water has a huge amount of calcium in it, usually in public water systems over 7,000 feet of elevation and above, because, the snow melts off and then it runs down all these different creek beds. And so by the time it hits, 7,000 feet or above, creek systems and stuff like that, and it goes into the public water, it has tons of, really heavy nutrient in it. So, we start, treating water. I really hate the whole reclamation of water. That is the most disgusting thing of all time. And it's not water, and it hasn't been water anymore because it hasn't been through its natural processes. But he talks about how, sunlight charges the water in a way. And if you think about it, a lot of the teachers I've had, say like the sun, is the generator. It's the giant power generator that generates, basically all life here on Earth. So, of course, it would generate, it's like the sun is plugging into the water and generating it, giving it life and giving it energy. Also, the sun is killing a lot of the, fungus and mold and bad things that may be in the water, and sterilizing the water. So when we were drinking water that was actually water, that had life in it, our bodies were probably a lot healthier because we wouldn't have a lot of the diseases that we have because the water would have been charged electrically, kind of by the sun. And so we would have gotten, the electrical charges. So when I look at the sun, not only do I consider sunlight, but I consider it one of the silent nutrients because it creates electrical charges and generates life in a way. So when you eat a plant that just came out of the soil that hasn't been cut, it still has those electrical charges in it. It still has the DMT in it. It still has the nutrient that's in it, if it's organically grown and it hasn't been forced fertilizer to mess with the mind of the plant to force it into creating something that wasn't present in the soil. But you eat the plant that comes right out and you eat it raw and you're eating electrical charges. You're eating, sunlight is what you're eating. And in the water, you've got the sunlight. And then so the other micronutrient, or I call the silent nutrient, is the microorganisms, which are, basically the same as micronutrients. The microorganisms, we need them in our bodies and our guts. And a lot of people, do this probiotic, and is that better than not? Yeah. I think the probiotics that are like kombucha that are living, and I don't really know how long kombucha microorganisms live in a refrigerated jar, after they've been taken off the main mushroom, because that's what kombucha is. It's like a floating, water-based mushroom. And then there's fermented vegetables, which are going to also have microorganisms and things like that. And then the plants out of the soil directly, that's why you shouldn't wash them, because that bacteria on them is a micronutrient. It's vitamin B's. And when those bacteria go into your body can actually make and formulate vitamin B for your system. Most vitamin B's that you buy, especially not the injectable ones that are bacteria generated, are not good for you, because they're not even biological. They're not even similar to what the body needs. So, getting the stuff from nature into the body, and almost every spiritual text too, it says, from the earth you were created and the earth you will return. So we keep getting more and more away from eating from in the dirt, being in the dirt. And it's sad. You can't drink out of a lot of the waterways anymore, where the sunlight would be collected and the water would be charged and it would be oxygenated and all the things that you need for that water to possess so that you can drink it. So the silent nutrients that are at the base of nutrition are microorganisms, which go hand in hand with micronutrient, and also the sunlight, and also the water expressed naturally on the land. So one of the things that I do over the last few years, I love little plant herbal infusions. And, now I'm only drinking well water. And so I will go to my friend's house. I'll fill up my containers with well water, and me and my dog pretty much drink well water. But I also put it in big glass jars and with wood tops, no metal, because the metal, it kind of steals the electrons or the electrical charge. And plastic's not good if the jar really heats up. You don't want that stuff in your water. So what I'll do is I'll put it in big jars with like a wood top, and I'll let it sit out in the sunlight for 2 or 3 days until I feel it's pretty charged up, and then I'll drink it. And then sometimes I'll put some fresh herbal plants in there, that I just picked. This year I started putting cannabis leaves off cannabis plants into it because I could get that water. I had this table, and I could put it right in the middle of the sand, right out in the desert where I was living. And it would just get so hot, it would probably get like way over, 120 degrees. And I'm not really sure if that's enough to get the cannabinoids to release, but I found that drinking the water, I felt a lot better. And then I would put other things in it, like I was putting Tulsi or holy basil. I grew holy basil this last year. And then the other big one I like to put in there was the lemon balm. So I was kind of making these water elixirs while I was using, the sun to charge, and then the sun was helping to break down. And then all those bacterias, and all that other stuff, that life force from the plants also went into the water. And, it's kind of it's a really sad thing. When you're living on a planet, this is how things are supposed to be done. But we have to go way out of our way to actually make sure, like we're not drinking out of a lot of the waterways, because there is giardia and there is a lot of things in the water that shouldn't be in the water. I think about like how heavy the chemtrails are some days and in the snowpack, and then that snowpack going into, the water feeds or the creeks, and coming down. And so that water is not really that clean. You got like heavy aluminum, and you have things in the environment that shouldn't even be in the environment, let alone, drink that stuff, and how to clean it out, and, how to live. And it's just, we really have to get back to, restoring, large scale land masses to kind of natural settings. Why we fight these people, and we fight the chemtrail people, and we fight the Monsantos, and we fight these people who, are, literally destroying the planet. I think Dean Wigington of geoengineeringwatch.org last year said that there are a lot of scientists that are coming forward, with all these soil samples and everything else, and water samples. And there's like heavy aluminum, like 12 feet down in some places in the soil, which means that all that soil is sterilized, and the trees are falling over. Places like Georgia and the South, trees are literally, hanging sideways. You can probably walk around in some of the parks and wonder, why is that tree, off to the side? Because the roots are dying. And as the roots are dying, it's losing its hold in the soil, and it's falling over because the soil is totally sterilized. So it's killing it from the root, basically. So we're in a period where we really need to figure out what our choices are, and we really need to kind of get back to, and even if we don't know how to do things, we just got to start picking up some books. Any type of book that you can find on health. A lot of health practitioners and farmers and herbalists and people, before the 70s, before the 80s, you find books, in the used bookstore, or I'll be going by a garage sale and I'll go and see what kind of books. And I have found some of the most amazing books on nutrition that go back to the ideas and philosophies of the soil, right? And there's lots of movements now that you can find and you can go to, and you can, one of my favorites was the people who wrote the book Holistic Management, and it's quite a book. And this guy originally, and holistic management's super great because it teaches you kind of how to manage your life, on a lot of different levels holistically. But, how he figured out how to manage, ranges, rangeland and things like that was, I believe, in Africa. And they were having such huge amounts of drought in some areas, and the water would just run off the soil, and because it was hard pack. And it wasn't holding, and the animals were starting to starve, people were starting to starve, and all this other stuff. And so he started to notice like how animals, like especially in herds, can like break up the soil. So he started how to manage, rangeland and stuff like that, grassland, pasture lands. And they would bring in like a herd of elephants, and they'd have them eat in that area, poop and eat. And as they were eating and moving around, they were breaking up the soil, they were pooping in it, which was helping to add some micronutrient to it. Also, something for the water to be absorbed into, also for aeration and things of those kinds of nature, and nutrient. And then what would happen is that the rain would come, and the rain would actually be absorbed into that area, and then things would start to grow there. So that's kind of how holistic management started a while back. And so there's great books, holistic management. I think the guy, Savoy, I think his name is Alan Savoy, who started holistic management, but they do like online workshops. There are a lot of range farmers now, even in America, especially in Colorado, it's really big in Colorado, that are following these natural processes on how to restore their pastures and their rangeland. So even if you're just doing a little, Biodynamic Association of America, National Association, also offers online classes that are super cheap when they have them. Sometimes they're like $25 for a 3-hour class on carbon. What is positive and negative carbon, and how to create positive carbon in your yard to knock down the negative carbon. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of amazing stuff for pretty inexpensive prices. You just kind of have to start somewhere. And since I'm a soil nut, I always maybe, show people the way to the soil. So there are a lot of nutrients that we don't even really get in our diet anymore. That we end up having to take. And a lot of people find like things like silica. A lot of people will start taking like diatomaceous earth. They always get the human grade, food grade. And what happens is like your blood pressure lowers, a lot of these things, your nails start to get harder, your skin and hair, because it's considered the longevity nutrient. We also in farming use naturally, we like diatomaceous earth because it's one of the best bug killers in that the bugs walk through it and it grinds off their body parts and they bleed out, so they can't really reproduce. So it doesn't kill anything. It kills bugs and stuff, but it doesn't harm, larger animals. You can actually put diatomaceous earth in with, some of the food that you're feeding your farm animals, and it can actually help them with parasites because, it goes in as a nutrient, and then as it goes through their digestive tract, it can grind up, the parasites and the worms, and then they can just, poop them out. So it's a pretty, positive win-win kind of nutrition. Diatomaceous earth is actually fossils, like shell type fossils, that they find that they grind down. And it kind of does have a little bit of a glassy, to us, we'd feel it as powder, but it is kind of glassy, especially to things that are like bugs or parasites and things like that. And you can take it and eat it. So the number one place that you would have found, or if you're looking for silica, you're going to find a lot of it in the grass. So last week Shannon, I'm trying to think about what her last name was. Anyway, so we talked a lot about that, about how, she is working with native grasses and trying to get the native grasses growing back in some areas. Well, these grasses would have developed and they would have had the silica in them, right? More ancient plants are very hardy silica based, and they actually grow in places where there's a lot of silica in the soil. So how you would have gotten silica out of your diet would have been, you would have eaten animals kind of in older days that would have eaten them raw, that would have, like bone and things like that. You could probably leach out into soups and stuff like that, or just eating and grinding the bone or the marrow. And, a lot of the stuff people kind of, in order to get like real nutrient out of food, you really have to eat it raw. And it's not really safe to eat a lot of animals raw these days. And you may need to build up your microorganisms in your gut first before you decide to ever try to do anything like that. So these people, some of these grasses grew like 5 feet high. They had grass called buffalo grass, usually where a lot of the buffalo were grazing. And this is like all over the U.S. and other parts of the world, that they had massive grasses that were 25 feet high. And then all these other kind of grasses that had different kind of nutrients and stuff in them. And they found, there used to be, speculation about the paleo age. And here we go with the paleo diet, which is like kind of a big fraud. And I find that people that write these paleo books have never done any kind of studying on nutrition, and nor have they really looked into any kind of science or anything like that. But, they try to claim that, paleo people had, like a predominantly a meat diet, and, they wouldn't have eaten any beans or grains, and, oh yeah, there was olive oil. They have books for kids that say, eat like a dinosaur. You eat your olive oil, stay away from, beans and grains. And those would have been weeds. I mean, those things would have been foraged food. But what they're finding now is that there are a lot of scientists that have moved into, and they're reevaluating things. Like there were a lot less accurate testing or testing that could be done on finding, bodies and burials and stuff of Paleolithic period. And so they, had assumed that paleo people would have eaten a lot of animals because they would find bone in the same area that looked like it had been kind of chiseled. Meat had been chiseled off the bone. And so they really felt like this is the reason why, that they started eating a lot of meat. Well, it would have been raw too. But then there were some scientists that went back, and they found, by taking the teeth out of some of the heads of the people that they found in burials, and they would find debris in some of the areas of the teeth, and they could actually take that debris out and test it. And what they found was it was grass. So paleo period people, basically would probably cut the grass down, and because it's 20 feet high, roll it up and then chew on it. I mean, because grass would have been, not how we know grass now, but old grass. Even to before, when the settlers came to the Americas, those grasses that grew high and tall, and that the paleo people would have eaten. So silica is one of the number one things that comes from grass. So just a couple more things on silica, since I'm kind of there anyway. So there's one of the oldest plants that we have in America. It's called horsetail. And a lot of people see it, and it kind of looks kind of like reptilian kind of thing. And most kids play with it because it kind of has like a feel of a snake. It can grow fairly tall, maybe to your waist. It's kind of green and black, but the key thing about it is that you can pull it apart like Legos, and then you can put it back together, right? So we see this in a lot of different places. It really likes places where there's water. Once it starts growing in an area, it's really hard to get rid of. But it's one of the oldest plants that we can find in our environment in the United States. And in biodynamics, we use it for killing mold. And in anthroposophy medicine and the plant medicine, which is a branch off Rudolf Steiner's work too, we use it for people's health. And the last couple of years, I've been taking anthroposophy courses. And there is actually you can use a compress of horsetail extracts, that you make. You just go get the plant or whatever and you ferment it. And then you can make compresses that actually, it turns out that most eczema is actually a form of a plant like mold living on the skin that has taken hold and, genetically changed itself to actually live on the skin. And so the horsetail is really effective at killing mold. And in biodynamics, we harvest it and then we ferment it for like 5 days. And then we strain it and then we put it in sprayers and then we spray it onto whatever's got mold on it, leaf mold or tree mold, or, I've even used it on patios and things like that have wood floor that, mold was growing on or whatever else. I've used it on things like that kind of as a natural like mold killer. And the reason that it works so well is because it's silica, right? So what it's doing is that it's increasing the photosynthesis of the sun, like by a huge amount, by putting out little mirrors that the sun is not attracted to it, but it's, it's got so many little mirrors out that it's attracting more sunlight to it and heating it up so it can kill things like mold. So what's really cool about like the horsetail plant is that it doesn't have leaves, right? Because it's like an ancient plant. It doesn't have like modern photosynthesis of how it takes in sunlight in the leaves. So what it does is it pulls up silica out of the ground and then it puts it into like, plant juice water. And then it forces it out its pores, the stalk straight up. So it'll pour out little beads of water, it'll be holding on the stalk. And then it takes in the sunlight using the bead of water with the silica in it. And the silica amplifies the ability of that bead of water to take in way more sunlight than the water would on its own. And then it absorbs it back in. And that's how it works with the photosynthesis. So like using horsetail, and usually you can find it pretty much anywhere. Some places it's really prolific and people have a hard time getting rid of it, but it has so many amazing, uses. So you could take and make compresses, using the horsetail, and you can ferment. You can boil down. I always recommend fermenting because fermenting kind of adds just a little bit more into it. And fermenting means that, I take the plant material, I boil it, or I boil the water. I have a big jar, always use a glass jar, and I put the plant material into the glass jar, and then I pour the boiling water over the plant. And you always want to use like purified well water, because, the chemicals or chlorines inside the water may damage the medicinal properties of plants. And then you let it set for 5 days and it kind of bubbles and ferments. And then after that, you pour it through. Best thing to do is to pour it through a legging or, a pantyhose, to get all the plant material out. And then you can use it. You can put it in the refrigerator if you want to make compresses for like eczema and, psoriasis and things like that to help kill it. So I guess, I was thinking and probably want to mention the fact doctors don't know this. They don't understand it. But everything in our environment, even microbial, bacterial, all these things can develop into plants. And I learned this from some work that I did with some immunologists and some other out-of-the-box medical people who have surrendered their licenses. And I've worked, all the doctors, if I go to a doctor, is going to not have a license. They're going to be out of the box. And I don't go, I just don't go to regular doctors at all, any way, shape, or form. And after, surviving cancer twice, alternatively, there's really no need for me to go to a doctor because at this point, they don't really know more than I know about health, at least, my own health. So, staph, strep, mold, fungus, there's like a list. And so what happens is and I'll just tell this story because this story will kind of like help people to kind of understand what I'm talking about. So I was in doing mini clinics with some of these amazing, brilliant people. And I do energy and structural medicine or traditional osteopath, and I do a lot of nutritional work. So I had a client that was brought in by somebody else one time. And he had this really weird patch on his leg. And it was kind of rough, and it was like discolored, and it was pretty good size. You know, it was probably like, you know, half of a dollar bill size. I mean, it was very visible, and it wasn't eczema, it wasn't psoriasis, it wasn't anything that I had ever seen before. And so I said, hey, you know, to one of the immunologists, out of the box ones, medical researcher, I said, hey, can you come in and take a look at what this guy has on his leg? And she's like, yeah, no problem. So she comes and looks at it, and she calls it like lichen fasciitis or something like that. And I'm like, lichen? I said, like lichen on a rock? She said, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So she says to him, she starts asking him some questions. So, were you in the military? He was like, yeah. Were you stationed in forested areas? And he said, yeah. Were you wet, you know, from the forest and rain? Yes. Did you, you know, camp out for long periods of time wet in the moisture in the woodlands and stuff like that? And he said, yeah. And she said, well, what happened was that, you know, the lichen, you know, got onto your pants or whatever, got up your pant leg or absorbed into your pant leg, and then you were sleeping on it and everything else. And because you weren't washing it off all the time, you know, within a matter of time, the lichen, you know, figured out how to live on your body, because basically, you know, it grows on rocks, and what it's really looking for is moisture and heat. And she's like, that's what the human body is. It's like, we're warm and we have moisture, right? It's a perfect environment for a lot of the things that live in the landscapes, to, you know, genetically modify themselves and live in our body. So, one of the things that happened the first time that I had brain cancer is one of the doctors that I was working with in San Francisco. This is like years and years ago, like 20 years ago. He was a medical intuitive naturopath, and he was like 85 at the time. So don't email me because, you know, the guy's not alive. he's not alive. Anyway, one of the things he said was, in Germany they have a it's a microbial medicine that's made, and each microbe is for different things: fungus, mold. They even have one for like black mold and all these different microbes. And you take the medicine, and what it helps to do is it helps the microbe in your body that's gone amok remember what its original self was. And so it becomes back to like a small microbe that's actually helping your body, instead of something that's gone totally crazy and now is taking over your body, right? So in the process of that, which is really, really a trip, is that you will basically, taking the microbial medicines, you will poop out what look like root masses, right? If you have a lot of microorganisms in your body that are plant-based, that have run amok, like, you know, there's a famous Italian doctor that has studies that, you know, most cancer tumors are candida and their roots. It's a root-based thing. And so the candida is a fungus, and when it starts to go into a plant phase in the body, it just grows roots. It doesn't grow like a stem and a leaf or anything like that, but it will grow a root base. And then the root base actually grows wherever it's at, mostly in the colon. And then it'll root out through the colon, and it'll root up into the stomach and the kidneys and everything else, like a vine, right, to get the nutrient and stuff that it wants. And by the time that it starts to make a root mass, that's when people, you know, crave sugar, they crave drugs, They crave, that stuff loves antibiotics. It loves all kinds of drugs. It loves, bread. It loves flour, and it starts to grow more and more, and bigger. So when I was taking the microbial medicine, I had a lot of white root masses that came out. I had yellow ones, which that turns out that's strep infection. So it's gone from a microbe infection to a plant, and now it's rooting in and growing into the system, which changes. And then you can also get mold. Mold does this kind of stuff, and it will actually start to grow like a root mass. And like I said, the lichen that grew on the guy's leg. And this stuff's really, really impossible to get rid of. And eventually it just chokes you out. Because I think they've done studies on Candida, and it off-gasses so much carbon dioxide in the system that it actually literally, every time it eats and you feed it, it literally suffocates out the oxygen out of your system, which is going to cause, inflammation, which is where your red cells start to clump up and clog your areas. And then you're not getting, once the cell starts to not form properly anymore in a circle, then it doesn't hold oxygen, doesn't hold nutrient, and it doesn't hold water. Doesn't matter how much water you're going to drink. So these different kinds of microorganisms have, once they get into your system, because you're warm and moist, they have the ability to actually change into something else. And depending on what you're feeding them or what you're feeding your body, you can make these masses, grow into huge masses. And then eventually what happens is the body tries to quarantine them. So say you have a root mass that's developing from Candida, and the body goes, whoa. It's starting to puncture through the colon lining. All right, 911, we've got to quarantine this sucker. So what it'll do is the body will try to go and form cells and things around this root mass, like a calcification around it. So this gives it the tumor shape, right? And then it tries to, bound up and keep the roots from going anywhere else. And so the body tries to quarantine it as much as possible. And then your immune system starts to break down, because now your body is trying to quarantine stuff, and it doesn't have time to actually work on, you not getting viruses, you not getting colds and flus, you not getting autoimmune system disease. And so then once your immune system starts to break down, then the whole Candida or strep or mold or whatever else it's going to be, really starts to run amok and starts to grow tons of rooted masses. And over a course of about a year of taking microbial medicine from Germany, which has now been outlawed for 3 years in America for no reason. It's like non-harmful at all. It's what they give people in Germany. After a year of taking it, when I had my brain cancer, to like clean up anything, and then I had to clean up all my low-lying infections after that, so that my body would actually, go after and heal my brain cancer. But I probably over a year period released white masses, Candida. I had some strep infection, which, started to yellow root masses that came out. And then, sometimes they were attached to things, but you could feel them come out. When they would come loose out of my colon, I'd feel pretty nauseated until they came out. So, and then I'd start feeling really good. I'd start getting more energy because these things are living off of you, and they're growing. And then I had a couple that were green, which were like, they'd have like greenish fur on them, kind of a thing, root masses that came out. And those were like old, those were serious infections that were coming out. And, the part that bothers me about all of it is that people go in, right? People start doing diets and they start cleaning their colon and stuff like that, and they start getting off foods. And these microbial masses that, had started to develop, and they don't like the new diet and stuff like that. And eventually, you know, these masses will unadhere from the colon wall or whatever and then come out. And people see this stuff all the time, you know. Sometimes people see the green, you know, infection stuff. They do like a major colon cleanse and they really clean the lining of their colon. And a lot of this green debris will start coming out, like long pieces of it that were like stuck. And that's like pretty old infectious stuff. So when you go in to have, you know, them, you know, send a camera up your poop chute, why aren't they telling people about this? You know, why are they saying they're looking for polyps? You know, and how are they not, you know, seeing all these root masses and all these other things that are going on in people's colons? And the other thing too is tapeworms. You know how many worms people have? I mean, on average, people have tapeworms, and sometimes people are born with tapeworms as infants because they're passed from the mom. And sometimes you don't know that a lot of your nutritional problems, or, you know, you're getting ridges on your fingernails or whatever else, or your skin, or you're aging faster. A lot of it is because, you know, you have parasites and you've had them for a long time. So why don't doctors, I mean, on average in America, everyone has massive parasites. So they don't see the parasites in your colon. I mean, there's so many things that are going on in your colon that they're sticking a camera up there that they're going to totally see. But what they just decide, well, we're not going to, you know, treat you for parasites. Oh yeah, maybe you had one polyp. Do you know how dangerous it is to have them remove a polyp while you have infectious material and, you know, microbial plant growth in there, and candida that could go from your colon? And I mean, what's the number one thing that they say about diverticulitis? You know, because your colon explodes in one spot and you got all this sphinctal matter out there. So how do you know how safe it is that they're removing this polyp? And there isn't any infectious material that's in your colon that's getting out through that polyp. I mean, thing is like mainstream medicine, I don't even think knows what they don't know, right? They have no idea or clue. And most people have zero idea about what's going on with their health, why their health is the way that it is. I mean, there's so little information. And I think the only reason that I've survived through everything that I've survived is because I've been lucky enough to attract people onto my path who have been exceptionally unbelievable with the things that they know based on scientific research, and then having to leave education, having to leave their doctorate and all these other things, and working with other people and collaborating to actually find out the truth about really what's going on with our bodies and our health. So anyway, I hope this has been insightful. I'm sorry that I couldn't get my guest on, but I will try to get him back on if he wants to get back on. And who knows, maybe this is what I was supposed to talk about. We just don't know. But I do online sessions through Zoom. And yes, I do charge. I do energetic work, some shamanism-based energetic healing. I also do nutrition, and I also do a lot of healthcare work. So if you're interested, you can contact me at consciousnessofeconomics@gmail.com. Go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Studio A, look down to the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slot where the bee flying with the pollen towards the flower, carrying stones and digging holes, and you can find out information about me, and there's links to my website. You can contact me through there. But right now I'm doing a lot of work with average healthcare, and I'm doing healthcare consulting for people so that they can understand what's wrong with them and the stuff they're taking and how to change that. So anyway, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great week.
this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio of freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of